I did have a moment the other day where there was talk, because Bee's obviously looking now at transition to post-college and what happens next. And that all starts, we start with an assessment for that in August. I'm trying to come to it from a very transactional place. But I've only been able to do that since having a much better understanding of my responses to previous experiences, and I've had trauma-informed therapy, which has been transformative. So when Bee finished treatment, I sort of felt myself unraveling, and from a mental health point of view, because of that sense of moving away from a safety net. I no longer had all the 3 times a week blood tests to know what was going on. It felt like someone had put a hood over my head. And then I remember driving, and there were some kids walking down the street, and I would have these really intrusive thoughts of they were going to fall, they were messing about, there'd be a play fight, they would fall in front of my car, and what it would be like to hit them in the car, what that would sound like, what that would like really hard. I remember being in Asda, and there's travelator type escalators, and there's a kid running up and down them. Like kind of the images in my head of the consequences of what that would be were just horrific. So I was really struggling. And so the GP referred me for like a CBT type sort of talking therapy stuff. I think my theory was that if and when these things happen, I'll be prepared. So if and when we have the conversation where they say, we're sorry, there's nothing else that we can do, I will be prepared. So the more time I invest in that, the more prepared I will be. And then you just go round and round in this awful, horrible place in your head. And with all due respect, the woman that was supporting me with the CBT stuff wasn't equipped to deal with the level of unraveling that I was presenting to her. The other thing I did do was I sought private therapy. So I did that, and I was asking people about, is there EMDR? Can I get EMDR? I am so lucky in that we have some private health insurance, and I saw some stuff around trauma-informed CBT. So I thought, right, that's what I'll try to do. So I ended up seeing a private therapist who specialised in trauma, and it was absolutely transformative. And the only reason I'm having quite a well-balanced conversation with you now about really, really difficult stuff, and my body doesn't react in the same way, why I'm able to think about Bee's next steps in a transactional way, because I can separate out the response, the biological response of my body from the actions of people that are, quite frankly, just simply trying to do their job. And I need to simply do my job. And but it was a good fair few months of unraveling stuff. And when I first went into it and he explained what we needed to do, I was horrified. Like kind of everything that he was asking me to do was everything that I had been trying to avoid doing for 18 years. I had found all sorts of different ways of not thinking about some of the stuff that had happened. And he was asking me to not only think about it, but to go over it over and over. When I used to look back on that time, there was so much self-loathing that went on. It was all my fault. I didn't protect her. I put her in this situation. And so obviously I gave her those genetics. I did that. Did I do something prior to getting pregnant? What did I do that didn't, And I look back now and I look at having spent so much time thinking about that. I was 31. I was a mere baby. I was absolutely doing my best. And that self-compassion, like I look at her now, just want to give her a cuddle, you know? But, you know, and nobody picked it up. Nobody picked up that I was avoiding. There were corridors in the hospital that I avoided going down. There were so many things that I was doing. Still, many years on, routes to places in the car that I couldn't. There's an island that I used to get to, and I used to have this little dot in the car with me with no hair, NG tube. And as I come up to it, that's the image every single time that I used to get to that island. So I find a different way to go to work. It just took me straight back. And then there was no choice. Once something had triggered that memory, and it could be a smell, and there's a hand wash that's used every bloody time. That was the thing, was there was no choice but to go through the whole story in my head before my brain was then freed up to do the next thing that I needed to do. Whereas now I am able to choose whether I think about those memories or not. Not in a distraction way, but I can sit with them now. And I can choose whether I'm going to think about it or not think about it. And that's a totally different situation. So I think, so I was diagnosed with complex PTSD. For a very, very long time, I had a sense in myself that suffering is the human experience. Suffering is the human experience, but this is at the far end of that human experience. And it is okay to have found that hard. It isn't, you know, they are not one and the same thing. And accepting that and saying, yeah, like, it doesn't mean that I don't appreciate that other people find life hard. But I also know that, like, parenting my other kids and some of the things that they've got up to, whilst they have been quite tricky, it's not been anything like that. It comes back to that self-compassion.